Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the ZINC Media Investor presentation relating to the acquisition of the Edge Picture Company. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just type in your question at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company would like to review all questions and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll, and if you could give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company would be most grateful. Now I'd like to hand over to CEO Mark Browning. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you, Mark. Morning, everybody. Good to see you again. I can't see you. Thanks for joining us. So we're going to take you through a bit more detail and show you lots of content relating to this acquisition of the Edge. When we met last, those that joined us, I think it was back in April time, I said that 2022 was all about getting some scale into ZINC. With this acquisition of the Edge, the group, the new enlarged group, is nearly 50% larger in terms of turnover, and the acquisition gets us to scale and sustainable profitability that we've talked about. Now, the image in front of you is from a film the Edge produced for the CBI. That's the Confederation of British Industry. And it's a film I'm going to show you in a moment, promoting, in effect, how the UK came out of COVID and businesses came out of COVID. And to put the acquisition in context, I want to just start by referencing the first shareholder presentation I gave in my first 3 months in the job, which was almost 3 years to the day, back in September 2019. Just completed the sort of the first 100 days or first 3 months or so, and I published a 3-year plan, which looks like this. It's the first, it laid out what we were going to do in effect until now. And it's almost exactly 3 years to the day that we shared this. And the first thing I said we needed to do was to get our own house in order, to get ZINC's business fit for purpose. There was a lot that needed fixing in the group, things like margin improvement in TV and rebooting the ZINC Communicate business, diversifying into new clients and new markets, creating a culture that rewarded commercial and creative success. And we talked about building a core infrastructure, a kind of strong spine to the group from which and onto which we could then add scale going forward. And I said, if we achieved all of those things, we would look for an acquisition in our 3rd year. And I then laid out a sort of broader picture of what the longer term horizon could look like with ongoing organic growth and additional acquisitions in outer years. Now, there was a large amount of skepticism, I think, at the time, and many investors felt very bruised by a decade or so of share price decline and countless reboots. And of course, we've had COVID along the way as well, which has presented the biggest challenge perhaps of all. But we have delivered all the elements of the plan. And I just want to set those out for you. These were the things that I said we needed to do to get our house in order. And if we did them, then we could scale by acquisition. And there's really, I don't think, anything stronger than sort of building trust with our staff and with our clients and with our investors by saying, this is what we want to do, and then doing it. So looking at these, the need to improve margins has been resolved. Margins are up 13% from when we inherited the company. That's £2 million of additional profit on those like-for-like revenues. ZINC Communicate has been completely rebooted. It's taken into new markets. And all divisions were profitable last year. This revenue diversification plan, we've been reporting on this consistently. We launched these 5 new businesses, which delivered £5 million into last year's accounts. We talked about made outside London revenues. This is particularly in relation to television, the importance of the broadcasters wanting people like us to produce outside of London. And our made outside London TV revenues increased from 58 to 71% in our last financial year. And we sorted out some of the costs, including the London office, and saved money there. And then this spine, this core, this excellence in the center. We've invested heavily in operational excellence around IT and post-production and offices. All our offices have been made fit for purpose or relocated. And finance investment, HR is a function which didn't exist before. All addressing the wider cultural issues to ready the group for scale. And then we said we needed to get into the US in a big way. with multi-channel networks and SVODs. And perhaps the one thing we haven't been able to do is to fully crack that US thing, because COVID really put the kibosh on that for a couple of years. So that stays on our roadmap. But the important thing is that this acquisition is the result of a 3-year plan and delivering to that plan, which takes us to the group today. And this is our visual illustration of how we structure our group. In effect, we have television companies and we have companies that operate under the umbrella of ZINC Communicate. And the color demonstrates where we're strong or where we're weak in that part of the market. And we have in TV a very strong presence in factual, but we don't yet produce in any of the other genres outside factual, which are listed on this graphic in drama or entertainment or sport or comedy and so forth. We've rebuilt ZINC Communicate and it's growing well, operating in areas like corporate film and branded entertainment and publishing and audio and so forth. And everything we do across both parts of our portfolio is built on the principle of quality storytelling and trusted access to people and institutions and places and countries. And everything shares the same infrastructure. Everything should sit on the same core of IT, post, finance, HR, and everything, all these shared functions. That gives us the critical opportunity for economies of scale and for driving margin and delivering growth to our investors. So TV currently, as you can see on the left there, in the pre-Edge era, it was 83% of the group and ZINC Communicate 17%. As a result of the acquisition, we get a much more balanced group. TV will become 55% of the enlarged group and ZINC Communicate's content businesses representing 45%. So we have better balance and we're considerably bigger. And I'll come back to this graphic when we conclude the presentation to see what the future may look like. But ZINC Communicate is an important part, and it's in ZINC Communicate that the Edge acquisition resides. They won't sell under ZINC Communicate, but in terms of our narrative about how we build our business, it is in that non-television production side, which we call ZINC Communicate, where the Edge sits. And just to remind you that ZINC Communicate produces content in a number of areas. Hopefully you're getting more familiar with this. We have an audio and now a podcast business that we built out of our historical radio business. We have a branded entertainment business, a corporate film business, and a publishing business. And the Edge sits in that corporate film and brand film space where we are already being successful. And just to put some of that in context and what it looks like, this is the ZINC Communicate part of that business that was really at a run out of road in 2019, and there was not a lot left of it. So it was a question of what could we do to rebuild a business in content that sells televisual type content with a camera and a crew, but doesn't go on a television channel, and sits on the same spine with all the benefits we just talked about. And it's a well-diversified group now. It's going to break through the 5 million mark this year, which is fantastic given where it was in 2019. And you can see the growth there. Now, that is business that is generated in ZINC Communicate, but in our accounts, we sometimes report parts of this in other parts of our businesses because that's where it's delivered. So that's the setup to why we've ended up alighting on the Edge as our first acquisition of this phase of our growth. So let's get into the Edge. I'm going to start by sharing some of what they do, some of their content, and then I'm going to look at the wider market in which they operate. And of course, we'll spend a little bit of time on their financials, but a lot of the information that's been published has all the financials in it. I think the value that we want this presentation to have is to bring the thing to life so you can actually see and feel the work they do. So, little summary of who they are and what they do. They are one of the largest brand and corporate film producers in the UK. They've been around for a long time, founded in 1990, with their headquarters in London and a substantial base in Doha in Qatar, around 60 employees and 100 clients, and based on the brand film marketing survey, they are in the top 5 of the largest UK-based companies in this space. And they make brand film and corporate film like us, but we don't do learning, and they do animation, and they do some post-production. And you can see some of their clients in front of you, as well as their reputation. They are best in class. So they fit culturally with that premium style of content and that award-winning reputation that ZINC's companies also carry. And I'll come on to some of these clients, but I'll just pick out one to get us underway. And that's perhaps, I think AstraZeneca is on here. So we may all have an element of AstraZeneca's product coursing through our veins following the vaccine rollout. And you may recall the day that the UK government licensed AstraZeneca. And we can probably remember the feeling we had when we knew that there was an end to the pandemic. Well, it was that day that The Edge produced a number of films showing the production, and they were paid for by AstraZeneca, and AstraZeneca commissioned The Edge to do two films. One to show the citizens of the UK and celebrate the vaccine, and I certainly saw a film on my Facebook feed, I think. I didn't know it was The Edge at the time. But also they produced a version of it for their internal staff and employees and stakeholders that celebrated the work they'd done over 18 months, whether it be the scientists or the lab technicians or the distribution companies or the lawyers or the pharmacists or the chemists, to say, in 18 months, we've created this vaccine. And they told their story, and they went to The Edge to produce that film. But let's watch some of the films. So I'm just going to play three to start with. The first one is for a client called Ahmed T. So this is a classic brand film where the brand says, this is the communication strategy we want to do. We want to reach a new and a younger demographic. We want to stretch our brand into new markets. And The Edge came up with the creative for this, a campaign called What It Takes. In effect, what does it take to be the best? And it features the Olympic gymnast Alice Kinsella. And it's a classic brand film from a brand that wants to reposition their product, and The Edge made this film. So let's watch it and you'll get a flavor of what they do.
It's giving a piece of who you are. Striving for perfection. Living it. Breathing it. Never settling. It's knowing your limitations. Then defying them. Being in it with all your heart. Here's to those who give everything for their art. We know what it takes.
I think that's a great illustration of a classic brand film. Films we make at the moment, films they make at the moment, and why a television company that is in factual television can absolutely have the license to go and make that sort of television or that sort of content. That sits with brands. Second film I want to show is for the CBI, called Seize the Moment. And again, the CBI were looking to take a lead on behalf of UK business at the end of COVID to kind of say to everyone, let's saddle up and go again, and we're here for you, and we're going to champion the UK, and we're going to champion the cause of business with the UK government. And they wanted to, and a lot of businesses are CBI members, they wanted to celebrate the fact that the pandemic was coming to an end and it was time to get back into the saddle, as it were. So let's watch the CBI film.
The last few years have been tough. Now we all want to get moving again. But if you just keep your head down and fight your way through immediate barriers, you'll miss the bigger picture. Take a look around you, and you'll see that companies all over the country have come out of the crisis at a new pace. They're looking further ahead. They're moving faster, taking bigger strides and making bigger gains. It's all happening right now, and it's time to choose. Are you in? Because a brand new economy is being built. A green economy. Which means you don't just meet your obligations, you adapt to unlock new opportunities. Where digital innovation's twice as fast as what came before. And the world of work is changing rapidly beyond all recognition. So step up to a new level. It's the way to grow. And the way to make the UK the most competitive and future-focused country in the world. Join the leading pack. Seize the moment.
And the third film in this section, many of you will relate to, I suspect. Our team certainly did. We may end up using this for our own purposes as well. This is a film about the threat of cybersecurity, of cyber attacks and the need for cybersecurity. It's for HSBC, and 60% of phishing emails, we're all familiar with those, are stopped by HSBC's security systems or firewalls, which means that 40% aren't. And HSBC wanted to make their people understand that they are more vulnerable than they think from this sort of activity, and they need to be very vigilant. This film had an enormous impact within the bank. When it was launched, it's won a number of awards, and it's now used globally across all of HSBC's workforces. So if you bank with HSBC, you'll be pleased that the Edge made this film and it had the impact it did. So let's play it.
Hi, Amy here from Finance. Thanks for your help last week. You happy with the notes I sent through? I've attached a bit more detail. Have a read and let me know what you think. Thanks, A. Sounds just like the real thing, doesn't it? That's because I know who you are, what you do at HSBC, all your
personal stuff.
I've been tracking your social media for months. Must have been nice to
See the family again after that business trip. I see what you post, who your friends are, who you
follow.
Of course, you've been told you shouldn't open anything if you don't know where it's come from. But it's from
Amy and
Finance, right? Except it's from me. And I've put a malicious code in his email. Click it. I can access your passwords, user credentials, customer details, everything. HSBC has controls in place, sure. But I'll just keep trying. You always have to watch out. I only have to get lucky once.
So I hope those three films give you a flavour of the sort of core material that the Edge produce in corporate and brand films, and the premium nature, the high quality nature of it. Let's just come on to the market now and some of the financials. I'm going to show you some of the market insights. I mean, there's lots and lots of it, and then we'll come on to, and Will talk to us about some of the numbers. So just really one slide to frame the market opportunity. They are a very large player in this market. It is a large market with over £1 billion being spent on this sort of content in the UK. It's an interesting market because there are lots and lots and lots of players, all at subscale. So, hundreds doing less than £1 million, and a very few doing north of 5, and even fewer, the 5% that the Edge is in, doing 8, 10 plus. The Edge has delivered over 8 million a year for the last 10 years. So they have been a really consistent performing company, very consistent performing company, which comes on to some of the criteria as to why we found them to be at the top of our list. And they've done close to 10 million on some of these occasions as well, with average revenues being just under 9 million for the last 10 years or so. So it's a robust market. They're one of the big players. And even where brands insource and do their own work, and some multinationals do this sort of thing, they still outsource 65% of their video, particularly the complicated, the big end, the high end, the premium stuff, to companies like the Edge. So we've satisfied ourselves that even though the risk might be that this market could be taken in-house, the big players choose to go to the experts, of which the Edge is one. So let's turn to some of their numbers. And I think at this point, I'll let Will take the mic.
Okay, so the Edge generate really steady revenues of 8 to 10 million per annum. Actually, even during COVID, revenues only dipped by about 15%, which is brilliant. So they've done 9 million of revenue on average for the last 10 years. They generate about 800 grand of EBITDA, which is ZINC's headline measure, and they generate about 600 grand of EBIT, which is what their earnout is based on, and I'll come on to that. So they generate really good gross profit margins, just under 60%, and they've got a high level of repeat business. So typically 75% of their revenue is from repeat business, and it reflects high levels of ongoing work with large multinational customers that can each generate upwards of £500,000. And then the Edge expect to grow their revenues from 8.2 million last year to over 10 million this year in 2022. And they've already contracted 10 million that's expected to deliver in this year. So they're a growth business. If we just come on to the deal structure. So we think this is a really good deal financially, and both for ZINC and for the Edge. So the initial consideration is at a sensible multiple. The earnout is self-funding, and the consideration is weighted towards the earnout rather than the upfront consideration. And the earnout incentivizes the Edge to grow their own business. So the initial consideration is 2.1 million upfront, and that is split 1.6 million in cash and £500,000 in equity, and it's at a 3 times EBITDA multiple and a 0.2 times revenue multiple. The deferred part is up to 3.9 million in deferred consideration over 3 years, and that's based on EBIT targets and is self-funding. Now the Edge generate about 600 grand of EBIT a year currently, and the maximum deferred consideration of 3.9 million, that'll be paid out if they generate 5 million of EBIT over the next 3 years. So they'd need to do about 1.7 million on average per year. So that would mean they'd need to almost treble their current EBIT of 600 grand. So it gives a high bar to aim for, but the critical thing is that they'll absolutely remain incentivized even if they don't quite manage to reach those heights. And that's because, take an example, they'd earn 3/4 of their deferred consideration, so 2.8 million of it, if they generate 2.8 million of EBIT over those 3 years. So it's about 900 grand of EBIT on average per year, up from 600 that they do at the moment. So if they go from 600 to 900, they'll earn 3/4 of that deferred consideration. And we and they think that that's absolutely achievable. It's what they were already forecasting to do as a standalone business anyway. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, the Edge are expecting to increase their revenues to over 10 million this year. And then there are further opportunities to increase revenue and profits as we integrate the Edge into ZINC. Over on the right-hand side of this slide, we've completed a £5 million fundraise that has funded this acquisition, and it also provides some surplus cash for working capital to help grow both the Edge and some of the other Zinc businesses. And the acquisition is on a cash-free, debt-free basis, and we expect it to be earnings accretive from day one. That brings us on to the strategic rationale for the acquisition. So the first point on here we've just covered. It's earnings accretive. It's a sensible valuation multiple. The second point on here is that it adds significant scale to the group and allows for sustainable profitability. So this acquisition, plus organic growth that we're seeing this year in the current Zinc business, will see the business double in size. So in 2021, Zinc's revenue was 17.5 million, and we expect it to be over 35 million next year. And that accords with a broker's forecast that has been put out into the market in the last few days. This acquisition also provides us with expertise and resource and scale to the existing corporate film production business within Zinc Communicate. So Zinc launched a corporate film and branded content business in 2020. Both are growing well, and the Edge adds creative expertise and marketing resource and commercial scale to that business. There are also upsell and cross-sell opportunities. So Zinc has a 7-strong sales team selling corporate films, and the Edge has a strong creative-led sales team. And we believe that the combination of those two can create upsell and cross-sell opportunities across an expanded product portfolio. There are also organic growth opportunities. So we believe that organic growth within the Edge can come particularly from e-learning and from their Kata business, which we're going to come on to. And finally, the Edge accelerates our revenue diversification strategy. So it reduces reliance on TV production from over 80% of the group to just over half of the enlarged group going forward.
Okay, so let's turn to some of the growth opportunities. We're going to pick out the two that we highlighted there. E-learning, and then we'll come on to Kata, and I'll show you some films for this too. So let's look at e-learning, and this has really expanded very fast actually since lockdown. So learning, training, that space where content is a real driver of it, is a growth market. It's really moving to this sort of bite-size content delivered through film. And Edge cite it as being a less cluttered market than perhaps the very crowded brand content space, and therefore it's a good opportunity for growth. So I'm going to pick out a couple of case studies here. EY, long-term client of the Edge, worked with the Edge for over 5 years. They've assigned all of their risk learning to the Edge. So that's financial crime, that's data protection, that's conflicts of interest, all critical courses. Everybody who works for EY has to do these courses every year. And then the films are subtitled into non-English and so forth. And the average spend from EY with the Edge was a couple of £100,000, rising to £500,000, rising almost up to £1 million on their pipeline at the moment. And they've verbally committed to next year. So learning is a huge part. It's a really important part of the financial services sector. The regulator has the power to fine companies if they don't fulfill these obligations. So companies have to invest in it. Amazon, I'm going to play you in a minute. Amazon, I was fascinated by this. So there were times in the last year to 18 months where Amazon UK has been recruiting up to 2,000 people a day. Obviously, the explosion of online shopping at the end of COVID and during COVID. Now that's a colossal task for any company to cope with in terms of onboarding and coaching and training and just knowledge for everybody, whether that's in the structure of Amazon or the values of Amazon or the logistics of Amazon or safety policies and so forth, rules, operations and so forth. So this next film shows an illustration of the sort of content that the Edge are producing for Amazon. So let's watch this one.
Once upon a time, a man started an online bookstore out of his garage. In 1994, that was quite innovative in itself. And our story could have ended there. our entrepreneur happily delivering packages of books to the post office. But he had a vision that this operation could be, how do I put it, slightly bigger. Within a few years, the company had added one-click ordering, product recommendations, videos and CDs, third-party sellers, cloud services, and electronic devices. Internet shopping was coming of age. Again, it could have all stopped there, but it didn't. Soon, Amazon was offering free shipping, marketplace, order tracking, and Prime. Now you could get your stuff in 24 hours. The online experience was transformed. People began reading ebooks and downloading music and videos, the physical becoming digital. Over the following decade or so, Amazon kept the innovations coming. Amazon Kindle, AWS, Music, Fresh, Studios, Local Express Delivery, Lockers, Amazon Business, Prime Now, Prime Pantry, Fire TV, Prime Photos and Music, Dash Buttons, Alexa, Echo, Twitch Prime, Prime Air, Whole Foods, Amazon Go. Customer obsession does this kind of thing to you.
Now some people may think that the Amazon story has been a straightforward upward curve of hit after hit after hit.
But that's not the case. Among the many winning ideas that have made Amazon what it is today, there have been ventures that, how can I say it, failed. Remember Endless.com? Amazon Local? How about the Fire Phone or Destinations? All good ideas, but for one reason or another, they didn't succeed. That's not a problem at Amazon. Not every idea will be a hit, but the more innovations we create, the more winners we'll get. Some will fall by the wayside, and we'll learn from those too. Think of all the work it's taken to build the mechanisms to deliver Amazon's success. Continuous incremental improvements that lead to longer-term gains. Great ideas every day that pave the way for the big breakthroughs. In this course, you'll explore the culture,
when he was nearly 13, my brother...
mindset, and mechanisms that foster that kind of innovation every single day by individual Amazonians. And you'll find out why, when it comes to innovation at Amazon, it's always day one.
So that's part of a course, and you can see that the number of films that sit with it. The next film I want to play is for Network Rail. This is all part of the learning side of things, something that ZINC doesn't do, but the Edge believe is a good growth sector. This is an animation film. Now, animation is an area that actually we're going to explore together because they outsource quite a lot of their expertise in this area, and we outsource ours as well. So we think it may be an area to invest and grow together, actually. But this is for Network Rail. The Edge do all their learning training films. Interestingly, ZINC did you may remember this, ZINC did a 9 o'clock ITV Access documentary with Network Rail in 2019 called Trouble on the Tracks. It followed the workings of the rail system. This film is for those workers, part of their ongoing safety, particularly the young male workers on the workforce, where there is a higher degree of risk when they are working on the tracks. Here's the film that was designed to target those people.
We've got this 28-year-old man who, unfortunately, approximately 3 weeks ago, fell from a 20-foot height. Traumatic brain injury. He had punctured his lungs, polytrauma, multiple fractures. Bifrontal damage is very significant, and there are some hyperintense signals on the brainstem as well. So I suspect this man is going to be left with very significant cognitive, communicative deficits as well as physical deficits. He's got weakness in all 4 limbs and a trunk. He still is being fed with a nasogastric tube, and I think he will be spending at least 6 months in hospital before we can make a prediction as to his ultimate placement of care. But having seen similar cases like this, I'd be amazed if he was to be able to return home. Walking would be a miracle. Wheelchair existence seems almost inevitable. Even to sit in a wheelchair, he's going to need a lot of support in his trunk as well as arms and legs. He's probably going to be fed via a tube. He's probably going to need a catheter for his other bodily functions. So he will need total nursing care for the foreseeable future. He has survived the acute event where things were likely to have killed him. So he looks forward to what should I say, a miserable existence. Modern science being what it is, he's likely to be kept alive for many, many years to come.
I can feel the silence in the room. It's designed to be highly impactful for that particular workforce. And just for your knowledge, that is not a real circumstance. That was a script read by obviously a clinical doctor. So to capture the reality of the risk. Let's move on to Kata a minute. So Kata being another growth area and a growth opportunity as cited by The Edge. A bit about their background and the team that work there. There's a full-time team out there, 13 staff, all managed from Doha and supported by the UK team. And it makes up, as you can see on this visual here, about 23% of their turnover. Some of the clients on here we'll come on to in a minute. The marketplace is fascinating because there are a small number of companies and you have to be registered in Qatar to operate there. And there's various qualifying criteria. Edge have been there for a decade or more. You have to have a sheikh sponsor you and so forth. So they are one of the few companies, one of 4 that operate at this sort of scale in Qatar. And if you do business in Qatar, if you're FIFA and you turn up with the World Cup, you have to use Qatari-based businesses for your services. So it's a good market to be in. We'll come on to the FIFA program in a minute. Another client on here is Ooredoo, the mobile phone company. Edge made a TV commercial, social media work for them. They're the Vodafone of Qatar. So I want to play you the first film. These films are all Qatar. This one is called Showtime for the Qatar Foundation, which is a government-backed body promoting education and infrastructure, medicine, and so forth. In Qatar, they spent a year teaching musical theatre to students of all ages, and it was designed to culminate in a big live spectacular show. But of course the pandemic hit and that just wasn't able to happen. So the Qatar Foundation said, look, we've got all these students together, we've made all this work, they're itching to do something. Can you bring it to life on the streets of Qatar and do it in film? So the musical elements here were led by a West End choreographer and directors. Qatar's Philharmonic Orchestra did all the soundtrack. It's won all sorts of awards at Cannes and at the London Film Awards and the New York Festivals. It gives you a flavour of the work they do in Qatar. This next film is a film about 2 twins. It's an edit version. I want to give you a flavour of it. It's for Sidra Medicine, which is a hospital in Qatar, medical educational centre, a research centre. It's based in Doha, and they asked The Edge to film what they regard as one of their finest medical moments of the last year or 2 since they opened. And the reason I play this is because if you think about the work ZINC does in television, which is access-driven, we often do observational documentaries, whether it's for Network Rail or whether it's for the Ministry of Defence or whether it's in a hospital. And we've done many hospital documentaries where you're granted incredible access to the family and the parents and the surgeons. And it's all about trust and expertise. And this is what we do in television day in, day out. And here, exactly the same trust, exactly the same access is being used, but the buyer is the medical institution as opposed to a broadcaster. So it's for a client, not a commissioner, but in all other aspects, it's a piece of access television. So let's watch a bit of it.
Mom and Dad were here just on a visit, and they knew that they had twins. She felt some abdominal pain, so when she came to the hospital, they recognized that she actually had twins, but moreover that they were conjoined twins, and that she had started to have a little bit of trouble. That tummy ache was real. It wasn't just because of a benign or a small issue.
The condition is called conjoined twinning. In this case, the children have a condition called omphalopagus, which means connection of the abdomen. So from just about the upper chest down to the belly button. And then there's obviously as well attachment of deeper structures. The first stage was to insert a special kind of expander, we call it. It's like a balloon, a silicone balloon, into each of the babies, just near where they're connected.
We have just found out that the twins are separated and everything has gone very smooth. So we can see the whole team is at a stage of calm. So really, really happy.
Nothing pleases us as pediatric surgeons than to put a smile on mom's face and return her kids back to her safely. I think that's just the greatest satisfaction of it all.
They will be playing, running, and I hope they will enjoy them separately now. It's the first time that they will be sleeping in separate beds, and I hope they will have a great life ahead of them.
ما بعرف كيف أعبر عن فرحتي بعد ما أنا اليوم هون في البيت وهم في حضني.
سمينا محمد وتميم على أساس أنه بيتذكروا فضل الله وفضل القطر والسدر عليهم طوال العمر.
ما كنت مصدقة أني راح أشوفهم منفصلين ومعافين ويلعبوا، راح أشوفهم راح أحملهم في حضني وهم منفصلين ومعافين. رسالتي لكل الأمهات اللي عندهم نفس الحالة إنه ما يخيب أملهم في علاج أطفالهم.
It was when I played that film when we announced this acquisition to the staff that I think a lot of pennies dropped as to why the Edge fits with what ZINC already does, not just in corporate film but in television as well, because that's negotiated access. You've got to find the stories, you've got to negotiate with the founder, you've got to negotiate with the surgeons, you've got to film it sensitively. It's all built on trust, and it's really a television documentary, but it's for the hospital, not for a BBC or an ITV or a Channel 4 or someone else. So hopefully that all these films start to make you realize why the Edge sits very clearly in the wheelhouse of ZINC's portfolio. Final film I want to play you is for FIFA. Again, this is from Qatar. And obviously the World Cup is at the end of this year. And this film I'm going to play you is the official 2022 FIFA World Cup global TV commercial, one of the ones. Shot over 5 days with a cast of 300 on the shoot. It's on YouTube. It's got roughly 11 million views at the moment. The Edge provided a lot of the infrastructure here. Just to be clear, the Edge didn't do the creative for this or the directing for it. That was another company. But it gives you, again, the sense of what's going on in that part of their business. So let's play this one as our final one. So it's a growth market. It's a market that the Edge have been in for a long time, and they're confident about the future with it too, which is excellent. So that gives you a flavour of the content they make and the markets they're in and the areas of growth. Let's just turn to the next phase then for ZINC, because as I said, I started with the 3-year plan, and we're about to start the next 3-year plan. It's always rolling. So the growth strategy is, as we've said publicly, it's organic growth powered with acquisitive growth. The left-hand side of this slide shows how we build scale over the next 3 years. We continue to invest and grow our current businesses organically. These are shown in pink. On the right, the businesses we're in factual television and corporate film and brand, publishing and audio. And obviously the corporate film and brand now accelerates into a strong presence because we've got the acquisition of The Edge. The Edge themselves have good organic growth potential over the next 3 years ahead too. So you combine that, and we're confident we've got businesses that are all going to grow. And we continue to look for complementary acquisitions to add that extra scale. Now, they may be in areas where we're currently in, which we can accelerate, like we've done with The Edge in our corporate film and brand business. They may be in factual, they may be in audio, but they may also be in new areas of content as we aim to build ZINC into a content-making company at significant scale on the public markets. Bit on our share price story. You will know, I know, we all know that the investment market is really, really, really difficult, worse for 20 odd years. So what we've done, I think, is really quite amazing. I did an interview on the day we announced this and was asked, why were we able to raise in the market we were so much from investors when others aren't? And I think the answer is, there's nothing more powerful than saying what you intend to do and then doing it. And we've built trust with investors, restored trust with investors, and they back us absolutely 100% on this journey. And being a PLC obviously does allow us to buy other companies, and our share price has done well compared to the market. But let's be clear, there is masses of headroom left in ZINC's share price growth story. And I do urge you to dig out the forecasts that have been produced by the brokers and look at various analysis that will be done by people that we don't speak to, and others will write about it, and just get a sense for yourselves as to the size of the prize here, because it's what we're in it for, as well as the creative and the cultural and the commercial journey. We're in it also to create value for everybody. That's clearly the priority. So you can see there's lots of headroom left in the ZINC share price story, but it has been a good story over the last couple of years. So that's where we sit. It's a good deal for investors and for ZINC and for The Edge. It's earnings accretive, it adds scale, gives us substantial revenue diversification, so de-risks the business as we go forward. It's complementary to what we do, and it operates in growth markets. So it's a company on the move, and we have supportive long-term shareholders. They see this as a 3 to 5 year journey. We've got the right strategy, and now we've got clearly again the financial backing to deliver scale and to realize all of our ambitions. So I will stop there and take some questions.
That's great, Mark. Will, thank you very much indeed for updating investors this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of the screen. But just while Mark and Will take a few moments to review those questions submitted already, I'd like to remind you that the recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and published Q&A, will be available via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. Mark, Will, as you know, you received a number of pre-submitted questions, and you've also received a number of questions throughout today's meeting. And I wondered if I may just hand back to you to read out those questions and respond where it's appropriate to do so, and then I'll pick up from you at the end.
Okay, I'm just reading them on my screen to the left of me. So first one here is, why has the new acquisition been so badly received by the market? Have you overpaid? I do like the light underarm bowls just before we get going. So let's start with that one then. This is the first one off the blocks. Why has the new acquisition been so badly received by the market? Well, I don't think it has. Clearly, I think the evidence points to completely the opposite. The market's just produced 5 million quid for this acquisition, more than the 3 million we proposed at the upper end of what we were aiming for, and it was oversubscribed, and it attracted significant new investors into ZINC, and it was at a very small discount. Where acquisitions are happening alongside investment raises, and they're very few and far between at the moment, we've been advised that they're happening at discounts of 20% and more. So in the context of the toughest market for 20 years, I think every bit of evidence points to the fact that this acquisition has been exceptionally well received. You may be looking at the raised price of £1 and against the price before, for the prevailing period of 2 or 3 weeks before, of £1 and 7p, and thinking, hang on a minute, we raised it £1, why didn't we raise it £1.7? Well, that's the price of getting new investors in. A 7% discount in this market is virtually nothing. But there is a price for bringing. We need new investors in the company. what's one of our long-term strategic ambitions is to grow our shareholder register for all the obvious long-term benefits of liquidity and resilience and so forth. So there is a price for that. So that was why there was a small drop on the day. The 2% swing, maybe 3% swing we've seen since is just driven by the reality of the market at the moment. There are very few buyers in the market. The stock market is at the moment in a difficult place. So we're just going to ride that out for a short while. But I have no doubt in my mind that the continuing growth of our share price will follow. So the question about overpaying, I hope we've answered that. I think you can see that's clearly not the case. You don't attract that level of investment and new investors unless they think it's a good deal. We looked at all sorts of acquisitions and felt that the one ZINC needed as its first in this phase is a really good commercial deal as well as a good creative and cultural deal. TV companies are exchanging for 6 to 8 times EBITDA or 10 times in drama companies. We did do independent analysis on the whole market for valuations, and we satisfied ourselves this is an excellent deal. I think the evidence points to that. So I think that answers that. Let's do the next one. When will you be issuing a forecast in the market? Well, we've Will made that clear. There is a forecast now in the market. Just to be clear, we don't issue forecasts. Brokers issue forecasts. So Singers have issued that, and they published it earlier this week. Probably take a few days, maybe a week or so, to percolate into the wider market, but it's out there for the next few years, and we will be referencing that as we go forward. Will, do you want to add anything to that?
I just note that those brokers' forecasts have the enlarged group at 35 to 40 million turnover over the next 2 years and generating north of 2 million EBITDA as we really get them integrated and get a little bit of organic growth as well. So as Mark said, I think it's well worth looking at those and kind of understanding the makeup of the enlarged group.
Next question is, what impact will the upcoming recession have on ZINC's growth plans? But we're going to carry on doing what we have been doing the last 3 years. We entered this turnaround with Brexit. Then we spent 18 months in COVID. We now hit a recession. It's not been easy, but we have delivered on the plan throughout that. We're going to continue doing that. We've got a strong balance sheet. We've got a clear plan that's working. We operate in large markets where we have a small share, so growth can continue. Will it be as fast as it would be in a buoyant market? Probably not. We'll see some inflationary pressure in the short term on costs, but these eventually will work their way through into our clients and into the market. I've built businesses through 2 previous recessions. We'll do the same with ZINC. So yeah, it will have some impacts, but we've planned for it, and we'll navigate our way through it. If you do another acquisition, will you need to raise money again, or can you work with your current reserves? Ultimately, I think this probably depends on lots of factors. It will depend on the size of the acquisition opportunity, the state of the investment market at the time, our share price, the appetite for shareholders, needs of the company, and so forth. But if a smaller acquisition comes along and we think it's right, we may be able to do that in our current means, actually, with our current reserves. But equally, if it's a good opportunity, investors like to invest. So the critical thing, perhaps, on this point is we have options. We're in a position of strength, which is good for us as a company and the deals we can do and the opportunities we can pursue. So I think it's only a positive position we're in at the moment. In your last trading update, you talked about margins falling back from last year. Can you explain more about this? Yes, I just want to put, this is to guide everybody here. We inherited the company. The group had gross margins of 25%, I think. We said we wanted them to sit around 33 last year. We resolved that last year. We smashed it and delivered 38. But there will be a number of factors. We said that was a very high watermark that bring them down this year. One of those is that they are, unsustainably high at that moment, given our size. The second is that we are deliberately now pitching and winning some business in new markets that sit on the edge of our natural territory. And I'll put one of those is the Sunday Morning Live program. It's live television. ZINC's never done live television. In order to get into the live television market, which is a market we should be in and can be in, we will need to partner with some other people, other companies, and that comes at a cost to the margin, ultimately, if you haven't got that capability in-house. But I don't think we'd seriously suggest we didn't try and do and push into these new markets. So we're going to, because we're on the growth journey, and that will mean that in some cases, that being one, we may choose to enter a new market with a big opportunity at a lower margin, which will bring our averages down in the short term. But margins there'll be some inflationary pressures too along the way, clearly, but ultimately want them to settle between, I don't know, 33 and 35 is what we keep saying, and that's what we're on for. And they were 38 last year, but they'll drop back a bit this year, but that's fine. That's that one. So I'm just rattling through. Can you tell us what your main institutional shareholders are saying and what their plans are for Zinc? Well, they're clearly, evidentially, they're very, very supportive. They've seen Zinc stock outperform the market. They know it has masses of headroom for growth. They have a 5-year horizon. They want to see the group operate at big scale, so 70 to 100 million. They believe content is highly investable in today's market, that it's a big differentiator. They back the plan. They want us to really continue doing everything we're doing, and we are really, really, really well placed with our fantastic investor base. So that's their sort of feedback. Can you explain more about your recent raise and how you managed it such a small discount compared to the current market? I think I've answered that one. It goes back to setting out a plan, say what you're going to do, and then doing it. I think the opportunity was very compelling, and it was no surprise. We talked about it as part of a plan. We set some criteria for it, and when we met the criteria, people concluded that they're going to stick to the plan. It's a good opportunity. It's well priced. There was a lot of demand for it, so the discount was very minimal. When will we see numbers showing what the new enlarged group looks like? Well, now they're in the market, so you can see them. Carrying on down, despite periods of intense consolidation, the indie space remains fragmented. Could you give a sense of the availability of sensibly priced acquisition opportunities in the areas you're planning to target? Well, I think the critical thing here is sensibly priced, actually. There are lots of opportunities in television. I think in factual television, it would have to be very, very compelling, and there are one or two out there that would give us real scale, because you'd always have to balance that up, and we balance it up against, well, could we just hire into that space? That's why we've got, in the raise, we've now got some opportunities to consider those things. So it might be better business for us to just hire and take a longer time frame, but arguably less risk, or we can do an accelerator growth and go and look at a factual company. But there are lots of content companies, and our whole strategy here is to diversify but remain singularly focused on content creation. So we have a good pipeline, is what I'd say about that, in television and outside of television. And the multiples, if you're going to go up to drama, and there'll come a time where Zinc wants to pay 8 to 10 times EBITDA. I didn't think, and I think that's been validated, that was the right opening shot for us. We've gone and found a really great company that are very aligned to us at a price that we think is much more sensible for our stage and our journey. Good to see the acquisition, what lock-in and are in place to retain the key people. I hope they're highly incentivized to remain with us without going into the confidential areas. They know their contracts reflect that as well. But it's all about motivation. Most importantly, regardless of what the legal side says, is are they motivated? Do they want to be here? Are they excited to get going? And honestly, I'm so excited. And I went and saw the whole company the day we announced this. This is going to be very, very good fun for lots of people. And fun is a big motivator, and creative reward is a big motivator. So I think I'm very satisfied that we're in the best place we can be in that sense. Another one here. In terms of integrating Edge into the broader group systems and culture, when do you see it being complete? I think it's ongoing, in all honesty. I mean, we're going to set off on lots of work streams in September. So we've got September, October, November, December to really get to know each other well, see where the opportunities are, build our business plan for next year, build our budgets for next year. So I think I don't see it being complete. I think it's going to be an ongoing process, but we're going to crack on from September, and we'll take it over the next few years and see where we go, where the opportunities, but all be driven by the question, what is in the best interests of growing our businesses and our people? Glenn, the Edge, as you stated that several brand customers spend £500,000 or more on the basis the risk of a loss of 1 or 2 clients is high risk and it depends on a few clients for the bulk of their income. Well, we looked at this. It's a good point, actually. We think it's actually relative. I mean, all small businesses have that risk. But when you compare it to some of our other very successful businesses, it's much more diversified than they are. I think from memory, I think their top 15 clients account for 60 to 70% of their turnover, but that's spread across 15. We've got some businesses, and we think, and they've been consistently well performing, who rely on 70% of their business from 4 or 5 clients. So actually, they're much less risky than it might otherwise be the case. But clearly, there's always in small businesses, but that's why you grow and you get scale and you diversify. So I think we satisfied that one in our due diligence. Could you provide more detail on the degree of operational and physical integration that you're planning and the time scale? Well, we've got, we've fleshed it all out. We have agreed with the mechanisms for this and making sure that everyone's motivated to do it. I don't want anyone to think that in a small business like this, you can put these companies together and suddenly find £500,000 of savings. You can't. These businesses are always run, ours included, on very tight overheads. The opportunity is perhaps cost avoidance, where there may be things that either company does that the other wants to do and now doesn't have to go and spend to do it directly, incrementally. It can find that within the group. There will be some, I think in the future, there will probably be opportunities to look at real estate and property. We will be integrating management teams. We will be looking at areas around sales and how we resource. We're very complementary to each other. There's creative opportunities. There's a lot of ideation that happens and that sort of sits on a shelf that can move to another part of the group. So as I say, I'd be more confident giving real color on this once we've really got into the weeds of it over the next 6 months. But we think there are good, finances and HR and technology. We will look at the technology thing as in the round as one area. Could you provide an update view on previously portrayed strength in content demand? Are concerns over advertising spend outlook and the degree of retrenchment by streamers having an impact? We are not seeing it. It's well publicized, and I'll use Netflix because they're the ones that everybody writes about, where they've pulled a lot of shows, including Meghan Markle's show, and we know of tens of millions of pounds of commissions that have been cancelled there. So that is the macro level pressure, and it will flow through when advertisers flow through. But I think the reason I remain optimistic about ZINC's opportunity here is that our market share in all our spaces is very small, and we're not overly dependent on a proportion of our commission sitting with 1 or 2 massive clients who, if they did pull it, would, in some companies are seeing 30% of their business disappear overnight, because we've been talking for 3 years about de-risking and diversifying. So the macro trend, the macro pressures are there, and they're well reported in some of the big players. And I'm not saying they won't impact us, but what I'm saying at the moment is that I think we are more resilient than others for our diversification reason and our share reason. I think I've answered most of those.
I think you've taken every single question, Mark and Will, from investors. So thank you to everybody for your engagement this morning, stroke afternoon, and thank you guys for your responses. Mark, Will, I know investor feedback is important to you both. I'll shortly redirect investors to give you their thoughts and expectations. But before doing so, Mark, if I may just ask you for a few closing comments, and then I'll redirect investors for their feedback.
Well, thank you for joining. Hopefully that's answered all your questions and you feel as excited as we do about this opportunity. And I would urge you, perhaps if you haven't already, follow us on social media, follow our website, get it in your feeds, because our communication is always there. We do these capital markets days, these open days twice a year. And I would love people to come along and listen to others as well as just me and feel this company's ambition and its momentum, because I think that's part of it. It's always quite a dry experience. So that's it. Thank you very much for joining us.
That's great. Will, Mark, thank you very much indeed for your presentation and for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of ZINC Media Group PLC, I would like to thank you for attending today's presentation and may wish you all a very pleasant afternoon.